I think you just have to press got it so that you know it's being recorded. So, what I was saying about people living together for a long time, what's really interesting is that, when we first met in the first flush of whenever it was, in our 20s, 30s, 40s, the idea of touching one another and communicating with one another was kind of a given. You didn't have to think about it. But as time passes, we kind of assume what the other person knows or thinks they know about our thoughts and our movement. And today, what I want to do is bring it all out into the open. Okay. So here are my disclosures. I have grants from the Parkinson's Foundation and from the Parkinson Council of Philadelphia. And my honoraria come from Abbott Pharmaceuticals. So in the classes that I was teaching, which I will confess were dance classes, Dance for PD program is really wonderful. My assumption was that after class, everybody was going to go home and they'd have a cup of coffee and they'd sit around the kitchen table and just hold hands and listen to music. But that was not what happened. I found that both in class and then from the reporting of the couples after class, that there was a lot of friction between them, just pulling at one another. The push and pull of, why don't you do this now? Why she said do this and you're doing that. It was as though the medical condition, the either physical or mental condition, was the rope. And that's what they were dealing with, pulling it apart and not coming back together. And so what I felt was that whatever was going on between these long married individuals was really getting manifested by the way that they moved and the way that they touched. So I didn't want people yelling at each other. I wanted people looking at each other in the eye, touching where it was appropriate, and perhaps even learning some new ways of touching, and giving each other cues like, take my hand now, or don't touch my shoulder like that. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what happened in these classes, and the classes are ongoing, and I'll tell you a little bit. If you're really interested, you can actually sign up and start doing this in October. But we started in 2017 in an actual room with maybe 6 or 7 couples in a group, and people who, again, had been married for very long periods of time learned to do things like walking on squishy surfaces, or one person walking on a mat and the other person walking on a flat floor, and how that affected it, especially if they had a cane or a walker. Then you see this other couple and they're kind of playing with each other's hands. I'm hoping we're going to do that a little bit later, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Then you see also, sometimes we have to participate with one another when we cannot look each other in the eye. And so this is an exercise where the first person in line initiates the movement and the other one does not protest. They just try and start out on the same foot, and they all move together and just lightly guiding by touching the other's back. And again, you see a little bit of this pushing hands situation. Then, because there were so many of us, I designed this activity on a wall. So the wall is great because, if you lean against a wall, you're probably not going to fall down, and the wall isn't going to fall down either. And in this exercise, it's called entrainment. And entrainment is a concept from physics where the first thing, you can see it looks like a train. The first car, the engine, begins to move. The second one is attached to it. The third one's attached to the second one, and so forth. And so as the person at the head of the line starts moving, the other people who are just attached to him, without even having, you see, some people are looking at their feet or his feet. But what I like to do is just get people feeling this initiation of movement. Who's going first? Who's going to follow? And then we switch around and the person who was the leader becomes the follower. again, I'd like to try this today if we have the opportunity. So one of the things that becomes a little harder later in life is rolling on a bed. And if by any chance we are in a situation where we fall a lot, the idea of rolling on the floor so that we can roll from a prone or supine position to a side position and then push up on our hands. So in order to make it a little bit less scary and easier to do, just as we're learning it, I use the wall. I say to everybody, let's imagine that gravity has switched. And instead of actually lying down on the floor is the wall. So we see this woman with her arms outstretched, everybody's with their arms outstretched. They are pretending to be lying down on the floor, but their partner can now help them just by showing them how to move one shoulder, turning it to the side, one hip, turning it to the side. And I'd like to play with this a little this afternoon. And the other thing we do is play. So sometimes if you've been married to somebody for, 40, 50 years, you just haven't gotten into the balloon thing with one another. This is that balloon game where you pass it back and forth without using your hands. And if it drops on the floor, somebody has to go get it. And the other person has to wait. And you can talk to each other. You see the people in the middle are cooperating by saying, she's saying, I'm going to turn around now. So it's going to go across my back. So make sure you stick with me. That is another possibility, but I didn't provide you with balloons today, so we're not going to do that. Now, 2017 passed, as did the next 2 years, and guess what happened? We had to be able to do it online. And so, believe it or not, it actually works kind of well to be doing this in your own home, as you guys are today, because you know what your kitchen, what your bedroom, what your bathroom look like. And so this particular couple is learning to play with balance between one another. They're kind of the same thing that they were doing in the room by pushing one another's hands. Now they're standing up, and you see the idea of taking one another's weight. Again, this is only in a safe situation. Perhaps one person's balance isn't really good. In that case, we do it with the person being pushed against the wall or against the refrigerator. And unfortunately, I can't see any of you. So if we do this today, I'm going to make you decide what's the safest way for you to do it. The other thing that was really important was figuring out getting in and out of bed. And so what we learned to do on the wall, that rolling side to side, then we go into the bedroom and we actually do the exercise in the bed with one partner assisting and helping the other one up. So all of this has to do with movement, doesn't it? But not just about movement. You can see that what's going on between the couples, it's physical, it's cognitive. They have to be expressing what they want to one another. It certainly is emotional, especially if you are in a relationship with somebody for that period of time. The fact that we're all doing it together makes it social, and it also makes it a little bit easier of not putting all the pressure on you, like I'm not doing this right, those people are doing it better. The idea is if you are collaborating and practicing this, it's not just a one-time thing like we did it today, or we're going to do it today. It's not a class activity, it's finding out how the way you live together, now that it's changing because of a particular medical condition, how you can make these 4 little balloons come toward one another and touch. And so I'm hoping that that is what I'm going to be able to impart to you today, that every time you touch someone's elbow and you pick up their arm, you are also giving them a message about how much you care about them. And that goes for the people affected with the condition and for the care partner. So let us also just talk about the care partner specifically for a while. So I know that we are at the Memory Center today, and I think you guys are probably in so many support groups and now have a lot of online forums that you can count on. But I think that these questions are really interested. You know, the care partner or the adult child of somebody with cognitive problems might be constantly thinking, I'm not doing enough, or if I have to do one more thing, I'm just going to collapse. And that these are some of the major questions. What does the doctor actually mean with these terms being, especially because now we know there are so many different types of cognitive impairment. Is the doctor actually giving you all the information you need? Do you get that from the nurse practitioner? Do you sometimes get it from the social worker or the neuropsychiatrist? I think the idea of getting lost in being a caregiver is really significant because you're a person too. You are not just part of this duo. The future is obviously something we are all thinking about. We have to think about the present tense, but there's no way we can't think about the future. And how do you prepare for that? And then I think what we're doing here is finding tips on how to make daily life more manageable. And so I'm hoping that today, just a tiny little sip of this set of activities will help. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but I thought I would give you this list of the symptoms that are probably most troublesome, more for the care partner sometimes than the person affected. The nervousness, difficulty falling asleep, the person seeming sad, lacking motivation, loss of interest in their surroundings, a flat mood, difficulty experiencing pleasure, and then hallucinations and delusions. And those percentages on the right were those calculated in this 2011 study by Martinez Martin et al. You don't have to be, checking off these boxes. Again, if this applies to you, it's interesting to know, but it doesn't really help a lot, does it? So here's what I hope will help. And again, these are the skimming the surface tips. The first one is exercise, and more exercise and more exercise. And people who don't feel like exercising, I think we have to get rid of the word. We just have to say moving. I used exercise because that was the one in the list, and it's the one people are most commonly familiar with. But really, exercise has become a very dirty word, and I think certainly through COVID it has. But movement is something we are doing all the time, even when we're sitting in a chair watching television. So the idea of moving consciously and with intent is what we're going to practice today. The second one, being socially active, has become very difficult. I'm hoping that more of you are getting out, being with other people, and really just enjoying fresh air. It is a gorgeous day in Philadelphia. I don't know where you are in the world, but if you can be out after this 2 hours, don't go away. I hope you're going to do that. So cognitive training exercises, just like any other exercise, those I guess I have to call exercise, right? And you may have some of these from your OT or your neuropsychiatrist, as well as coping strategies. Because paying attention, remembering certain things, not remembering everything, and then doing daily tasks that can be not just sort of rote, but can be made really interesting in a variety of ways. Eating well. Sometimes we just want to eat those cookies that happen to be in the pantry. But I'm not the one to tell you about nutrition, but it really does, in fact, improve mood and improve cognitive ability as well as physical. The next one, my yoga teacher is always saying this to me. Don't rush. Instead of when the doorbell rings, you know what? That package from Amazon is just going to sit there for a while. You do not have to rush to get it. If your loved one needs something, unless they are in a terrible state, just give it a few breaths before you pick yourself up and go to this next activity. Multitasking has made all of us a little bit crazy. So this is a way to really take stock of what should be done first, what should be done second, what can wait until tomorrow, taking your time. And then, of course, reaching out for help. I think the fact that you're all here today means that you know when you could use some more support. But there are other people who are closer to you than this group of all of us on Zoom today. And some of them really, really want to help. If there are people in your network who can give you some respite so that you can go away, go have your nails done, go take a walk by yourself before coming back to this really big job and to being with the person you love, just tell them. That can be a difficult conversation, but you may be surprised at how much people want to help and how they just don't know what to do. And then again, for your own well-being, if you need emotional help, counseling help, there's a lot out there. And certainly through the Penn Memory Center, through Penn Medicine in general, through your doctor's offices, this is somewhere to ask and to say. Sometimes we don't know that we're anxious or depressed, but if your behavior is changing, it's time to start looking at that and perhaps reach out for help. So moving on from here, the best time to do something like what I'm going to suggest we do together is when there's no particular need for it, because the mind and the body are going to get better at it the more we do it. And if I give you this crazy new thing to do today and you say, oh, this is really tough, it still is a good time to learn it. And then you can practice it, and you may be surprised if you leave it alone for a few days and come back to it, that it's just a little bit easier and that it makes your life a little bit more calm. So I'd like to stop my screen share for a moment. And then I have to figure out how to do that. There, I think I did it. Did I, Megan?
I stopped it for you, Judith, but you're on.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. So what I'm going to suggest is that you either raise your hand, we come back into gallery view if you wish. If you don't, you want to keep your camera off, fine. So put some suggestions or some recommendations in the chat for things that you and your loved one really like doing together. And why? Why do you like doing it? When do you do it? And how could we recreate it here? You don't have to write all that. If you just give me the cues, I will turn that around. Okay.
Judith, is there additional presentation that you'll be giving, so we should keep the recording going?
Oh, yes, there is additional presentation, but I would right now, can we turn it off and then come back?
I think I can pause it. Let's give it a try. Judith, we are recording.
And I'm going to go back to my slideshow. But now I got to go on to the not too sure how to get there. I think I see. Right. Yes, that's it. So here are these activities. Let me just tell you in what happens when we do this as a group. We're doing it on Zoom, so you are in your house. It's an hour a week, and a new program will be starting October 4th, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. But the things that we pick up are not just, these exercises we just did they're fun and they're unusual, but the thing is, what are we getting out of it? Well, the first thing is touch is just not casual, and it really can't be when you are dealing with making sure that the other person is okay physically, mentally, etc. And that Just because you're helping somebody does not mean they can't do it alone. Some days, if you begin to really communicate, your partner may say, "Oh, I'm so out of it today. I need a lot of help." Sometimes they won't know, but sometimes you can tell. Other days, they really are functioning very, very well, and they don't want to be fussed over. They don't want to be babied. So that's important too, is to communicate in some way about the level of help that's needed. And if you, care partner, need some help and you feel it is a task that can be helped with, go ahead and ask for it. It's important to prepare for, well, I'm talking about off time in terms of Parkinson's medications, but it may be an off time during the day because of other medications, or just because they get really sleepy at 6 o'clock at night. What times of day are really going to be best for doing things with one another? Talking about learning some skills, which we're about to start practicing. Really, practicing is the whole thing. And as I said, practice never makes perfect. It absolutely doesn't. I've done these things, I can't tell you how many times, and I'm always learning something new, especially if I'm with a partner. And finally, it is really nice to get touched. I happen to live alone. And so, after COVID, it was just amazing when somebody hugged me. I can't tell you the overwhelming sensation that I'd never been hugged before. So pay attention to that. Okay, so speaking of hugs. So this is the pictures of what we were doing in 2017, helping a partner get out of a chair, whether they needed the help or not. Sometimes they really did, sometimes they really didn't. And we were practicing reversing, right? You can see in the first picture, I'm in the chair, she's helping me. And the second, it's reversed. So we're going to try a little of that. And I hope this video will play how we're going to go about doing it. Gravity. And while I show, I'm going to talk about how we can discover this. So the first way I call the hug. And what I'm going to do is come forward and put my foot in between my partner's 2 feet. So that as I have my back leg like a kickstand, as if I were going to move something heavy, I am braced and she could come toward me. I'm going to come forward and put my arms around her, and I'm going to have my hand open on her back. So if she were a larger person, I'd want it further down, closer to where she's heavier, but we're about the same size. So I'm going to take my open hand on the middle of her back and then come in between her legs and hug her. We'll put our heads together, and she's going to tell me by counting when she's ready to get up. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to come back together and just stay here for a moment while we wait for our centers of gravity to align. The second way I call the hook. So you can see she's kind of made a hook with her hand, and I'm going to make a hook with mine. So I'm just basically lifting under her bicep with my forearm and elbow. Once again, I have an open hand on her back, and she's going to tell me when she's ready. I am going to have to move forward when she moves forward, again, so we can get our centers of gravity closer to one another. 1, 2, and 3. And there we are, both standing. And then the third way is we're going to use a brace of our crossed hands, each of us crossing. And once again, I have my foot in a kickstand. Now our bodies are farther apart from one another. So as she comes toward me, I have to make sure that I get closer to her as well. 1, 2, and 3. And then I come toward her and we just wait and look at each other. So, here's what I'd like to do. Once again, Megan, I think I'm going to have to ask you to stop this. We've had the chair. So, one of the things that, of course, is endemic in Parkinson's disease, but happens to be, oh, I have to go through the whole thing, don't I? Wait a minute. Happens to be something that all of us who are over the age of 65 have to think about is falling. And falling is terrifying, and it's also something that it's unpredictable, and it's just very difficult to manage. Again, I have no idea who's in the room with me, but I would like to give you the opportunity to see the way that this can be done safely. So we're going to turn on another video and watch this person who is me have something nice and soft underneath me. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that you get blankets, mats, an extra mattress off of your fold-out couch, and put that on the floor so that you can learn this technique. What we want to learn is how to open up the hip socket so that our knee can go all the way to the floor. And by having a support underneath us that's nice and soft, it's really not as terrifying. So what I'm going to do is come to the edge of my chair, and then I just want to ease my foot back behind me so that I flatten out this distance in between my torso and the top of my hip. That way the knee is already on this mat. I can pull my weight forward and then get onto my all fours. To get back, I'm going to turn around. I'm just going to angle this a little. And I'm going to put one foot flat on the floor. So I had to go from having my weight on 2 knees and 2 hands. I put one hand on the chair, 1 foot on the floor, and as I get higher up, I maybe want to put my hand on the back of this chair, and I'm going to give myself a little momentum. I'm going to rock 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to turn in space and sit on the chair. If I have a partner with me, it may be even easier. I'm just going to remove this so that you can have a better view. So we're going to assume that I already got onto the floor by myself. And what you're going to do is keep unfolding or removing mats and blankets until you feel okay on some sort of carpeted surface. Then, if I am really unable to use the strength of my arms to get from the floor back onto a chair, my partner's going to come up behind me, and she's going to bolster the back of my thigh with the front of her thigh. She's also going to take her whole body and put it around me so that she's able to get me onto the chair when I begin to rock. And I'm going to go, and 1, 2, then I'm going to push up from the floor, and she is pushing me up at the same time. So I'm using her leg as a fulcrum to press my body into the chair. And before we think about practicing that, I'm going to show one more, which is walking backwards, or even just taking steps backwards. Oh, I guess I'm not, because it's not attached to the video. Well, I'll just talk about it. I think it would be interesting for you to hear this couple who took the course with me on Zoom last year.
Oh, just a little bit of background to it, because this year, you know, right before the COVID, there was some challenges for us because Terry had a fall and he broke his shoulder. So there was need for me to help with moving him either from a sitting position to a standing position or in bed. So when I read through what you were going to do with couples and touching and kind of communicating, I thought it would be something that we could learn to do together, because we were definitely having some challenging moments in trying to do that. And it affected my physical well-being as well, because my back kept bothering me when I was trying to help him out of a seat. So I just thought for both of us, this could be a good thing. That's what I was really hoping to get out of it, is some just some ideas of how to move together.
And interestingly enough, we were in the process of taking PT physical therapy for me. And we were actually working on how to help somebody out, how to, just assist. So we're tied right in.
So if any of you are interested in this, this program will start October the 4th online. It will be an hour each week for 4 weeks, sponsored by Abbott Pharmaceuticals, who are the people who create the deep brain stimulation devices and are extremely interested in education for those who are dealing with both movement disorders and cognitive disorders. So you can contact me at judithsachs@mac.com to sign up. And now I will actually end the presentation, and we're going to do a little bit of floor work, if that's good for you. Can you stop my, oh, I see. End show. Good. Great.